I never thought accepting a party invitation would nearly destroy my life. It started with a simple text from my friend Marcus, someone I'd known for years. He told me he was hosting something unforgettable. At the time, I thought he meant a wild but harmless party. I had no idea just how literal and dangerous that word would become. The night of the party, everything seemed normal at first. The house was packed, music was loud, and drinks were flowing. Marcus had always been known for throwing over-the-top parties, so nothing felt out of place. But then, right as things were getting started, he clapped his hands and announced he had a surprise for everyone. He led us upstairs into one of his many bedrooms. In the center of the room was a massive object completely covered by a thick cloth. The room went silent. You could feel the tension building. Slowly, Marcus grabbed the cloth and pulled it off. Underneath was a gigantic steel cage. And inside that cage was a full-grown lion. For a moment no one spoke. I thought I had to be hallucinating. A lion in a bedroom at a party. My brain couldn't process it. Some people laughed nervously, others took out their phones, and a few looked genuinely terrified. Marcus stood there smiling like he'd just revealed the best surprise in the world. One guy, probably drunk and trying to show off, walked right up to the cage and stuck his hand through the bars. That's all it took. The lion, which had been calm just seconds before, suddenly snapped. It swiped at his hand, scratching him badly, then lunged at the cage, slamming into it with terrifying force. The room exploded into screams. That was my cue to leave. I turned around and ran downstairs. As I reached the bottom, I heard a high-pitched scream echo through the house, followed by the sound of people stampeding behind me. I didn't stop to look back. I bolted out the front door. My car was parked several blocks away, and I sprinted the entire distance like my life depended on it because honestly it felt like it did. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. When I finally reached my car, I jumped inside, locked the doors, and drove off immediately. The entire drive home I was in shock. I barely registered the traffic lights or the turns. All I could think was I could have died tonight. When I got home, I locked every door and window, sat on my couch and just stared at the wall. My hands were still shaking. I kept replaying the scene in my head. The cage, the lion, the screams. Felt like something out of a horror movie, not real life. I told myself I was lucky. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't the one who stuck my hand in the cage. I wasn't responsible. I tried to convince myself it was over, that it wasn't my problem. But I was wrong. A few days later I got a phone call that made my stomach drop. It was the police. They told me the party incident had been reported and they were investigating. Someone had been injured, and because I was present, they needed my statement. I agreed to cooperate, confident I had nothing to hide. Then the officer said something that almost made me drop the phone. He told me that someone had accused me of bringing the lion to the party. I laughed at first because it sounded so absurd. I told him that wasn't true, that I wasn't even the host, and that Marcus was the one who organized everything. But the officer's tone didn't change. He said several witnesses claimed otherwise. According to them, I was the one responsible. That's when reality hit me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a setup, and I was walking straight into it. I thought telling the truth would clear everything up, but the police already believed I was guilty. And what I discovered next would make things far worse. I went to the police station expecting a short conversation and a quick resolution. Instead, I walked into one of the most surreal experiences of my life. The moment I sat down, the tone felt wrong. They weren't asking questions, they were accusing. Every answer I gave seemed to be met with more suspicion. They wanted details. Where I was standing, who I was talking to when I arrived, when I left. I told them exactly what happened, that I was just a guest, that I had no idea about the lion, and that I left as soon as things got dangerous. But then they started bringing up witnesses. Multiple people, they said, claimed they saw me with the lion. Some even said I helped bring it into the house. I was stunned. I didn't even go upstairs until Marcus called everyone up, and even then I was nowhere near that cage. Yet somehow I was now being painted as the mastermind behind the whole thing. I kept repeating that Marcus was responsible. But the more I spoke, the more I realized something terrifying. They weren't listening. When I finally left the station, I felt drained, emotionally and mentally. I had just spent hours defending myself for something I didn't do, and I could tell this wasn't going to end quickly. That's when I knew I needed a lawyer. The first person I thought of was a man my family had trusted for years, my uncle's old lawyer. A few years ago, my uncle had been accused of embezzlement. The evidence against him had been overwhelming. Bank statements, forged documents, testimonies. Everyone thought he was done for. Then this lawyer took the case. He dismantled the prosecution's argument piece by piece. He found inconsistencies no one else noticed. By the end, not only was my uncle acquitted, but the entire case collapsed. To this day, I don't know whether my uncle was innocent, but I know that lawyer saved his life and career. His name was Tommy. I knew hiring him wouldn't be cheap, but at that point money didn't matter. My freedom did. Called him immediately. Thankfully, he agreed to take my case. We met before heading back to the station. He was calm, collected, and brutally honest. He told me the charges I was facing were serious. Reckless endangerment, causing injury, and possibly worse if the injured party pursued further action. If convicted, I could be looking at serious jail time. Hearing that out loud made my stomach twist. Back at the station, Tommy handled everything. He advised me when to speak, when to stay silent, and how to answer questions without incriminating myself. Still, the police kept pushing the same story, that multiple witnesses claimed I was involved. After the interrogation, Tommy and I sat in his car in silence for a few minutes. Then he spoke. "I won't sugarcoat this," he said. "This is going to be a fight." He explained that the first step was establishing my alibi, but that alone wouldn't be enough. Too many people were claiming I was guilty. That meant someone was lying. And when multiple people lie about the same thing, it usually means one person is pulling the strings. Then he said the name. Marcus. Tommy told me people lie when they're scared, or when they're trying to protect themselves. And whoever brought that lion into the house would be facing serious consequences. Criminal charges, massive fines, and possibly prison. That person needed a scapegoat. And somehow, that scapegoat had become me. But Tommy wasn't worried. He told me we were going to dig into every witness. Their backgrounds, their connections, their motivations. And most importantly, we were going to investigate Marcus, because the truth had a way of surfacing when you followed the money, the messages, and the mistakes. Hearing him say that gave me my first real sense of hope since the nightmare began. For the first time, I felt like someone was actually on my side. I thought Marcus had simply thrown a reckless party, but what Tommy uncovered about his online life changed everything. A few days into the investigation, Tommy called me into his office. The moment I sat down, I could tell he had found something big. "I figured out what Marcus was really doing," he said. I assumed he meant financial problems or personal drama. I wasn't prepared for what came next. It's about his social media. At first, I didn't understand how social media had anything to do with a lion. Then Tommy pulled up Marcus's Instagram account on his computer. Marcus was known for throwing extravagant parties, the kind that people filmed, shared, and talked about. His online presence was built around being that guy, the one with the wildest events. But something had changed. Tommy showed me analytics from the past several months. Marcus's engagement, likes, comments, shares, had dropped significantly. A few months earlier, one of his parties had gone badly when a woman was injured, and Marcus hadn't taken responsibility. People tried to cancel him. His reputation took a hit. Sponsors backed off. His income dropped. For someone whose lifestyle depended on attention, that was devastating. He was desperate, Tommy said. And desperate people do reckless things. Then he showed me emails. Encrypted emails between Marcus and an unknown contact. They mentioned special arrangements, security, and delivery timelines. At first glance, it looked vague, but when Tommy connected the dots, the meaning became horrifyingly clear. Marcus had been planning something extreme. Not for fun. Not for entertainment. For virality. He wanted to go viral again, Tommy explained. He needed something so outrageous that people couldn't ignore him. Something that would dominate social media. That something was a lion. Tommy uncovered messages where Marcus bragged about his next party being legendary and unforgettable. At the time, people thought it was just marketing hype. Now it felt like a warning. He didn't rent the lion as a joke. He didn't stumble into the situation. He orchestrated it carefully and deliberately, hoping the chaos would bring him back into the spotlight. But when things went wrong, when someone got hurt, he panicked. And that's when he needed someone to blame. I was one of the few sober people at the party. I left early. I wasn't part of his inner circle. That made me the perfect target. Hearing all of this was infuriating, but also oddly relieving. For the first time, the situation made sense. This wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was calculated. But proving that in court was another story. As Tommy continued digging, things escalated. I started receiving anonymous messages, threats telling me to drop the investigation. One night, someone tried to break into my apartment. My window was shattered by a brick with a note attached. I didn't need proof to know who was behind it. Marcus was scared. And scared people become dangerous. Tommy told me we needed one final piece of evidence. The person who supplied the lion. If we could find the dealer, we could link everything directly back to Marcus. But that wouldn't be easy. There's no directory for people who rent out exotic animals. Still, Tommy wasn't discouraged. Every illegal business leaves a trail, he said. We just have to follow it. He started combing through Marcus's emails, social media posts, and encrypted messages. Eventually, he found a pattern. References to private meetings in industrial areas, vague mentions of transport, and payments routed through obscure accounts. Then he pulled up a map. There, he said, pointing to a cluster of locations in a run-down part of the city. That's where he met the supplier. It was a long shot, but it was our best lead. We were closing in on the truth, but the deeper we went, the more dangerous Marcus became. And what happened next nearly cost me my life. The area Tommy identified was nothing like the polished neighborhoods Marcus lived in. It was filled with abandoned warehouses, fenced-off lots, and businesses that clearly didn't operate in daylight. The kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be found. Tommy suggested we start asking around, carefully. We posed as event organizers looking to rent something exotic for a private gathering. Most people either laughed us off or refused to talk. But after several dead ends, one person finally pointed us in a direction. A guy named Rick, he said. If anyone can get you something like that, it's him. It took a few days of searching, but we eventually tracked Rick down to a filthy warehouse on the edge of town. The moment we stepped inside, the smell hit us. A mix of animal musk, decay, and chemicals. It was enough to make my stomach turn. Rick eyed us suspiciously. Tommy kept his voice calm and confident. He told Rick that a friend had rented an exotic animal recently and recommended him. When Rick asked who, Tommy said one word. Marcus. Rick's demeanor changed instantly. He relaxed. Then Tommy asked him directly how much it cost, what the process was, and how he knew Marcus. Rick hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. Marcus came to me a few weeks before the party, he said. Said he needed something big. Something unforgettable. Rick told us he warned Marcus that a lion wasn't a party trick, that it was dangerous, unpredictable, and illegal to keep in a residential property. But Marcus didn't care. He paid a massive amount of money. No questions asked. My heart was racing. Rick admitted that Marcus arranged everything. Transport, timing, delivery. The lion wasn't borrowed. It wasn't accidental. It was rented intentionally, for that specific night. Tommy and I exchanged a look. We had him. But Tommy didn't stop there. Next, we went to Marcus's neighborhood. One of his neighbors had a doorbell camera pointed directly at his driveway. When we explained the situation, she agreed to let us review the footage. And there it was, clear as day. Marcus leading a lion into his house before the party. No cuts, no edits, no ambiguity. It was undeniable proof. At this point, Marcus became increasingly desperate. The threats intensified. The harassment escalated. He knew the walls were closing in. Then one night things took a terrifying turn. I was driving home after meeting with Tommy. The day had been long, but we were finally making real progress. I was just a few blocks from my apartment when I pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The pedal sank to the floor. No resistance. No slowing. My heart nearly stopped. The car kept moving, faster and faster. Panic flooded my body. I yanked the emergency brake. The car skidded violently, tires screeching, swerving across the road. I fought to keep control, narrowly missing parked cars and oncoming traffic. Finally, the car came to a stop, inches from a tree. I sat there shaking, barely able to breathe. It didn't take long to realize this wasn't an accident. Someone had tampered with my brakes. And I knew exactly who. When I told Tommy, he was furious. "That's not just intimidation," he said. "That's attempted murder." We had my car examined. The evidence confirmed it. The brake lines had been deliberately cut. Now Marcus wasn't just reckless. He was criminal. With video evidence, a dealer confession, and attempted murder. Marcus was out of options. But what happened next shocked everyone. Armed with Rick's testimony, the doorbell footage, and evidence of tampering with my car, Tommy went straight to the police. This time they couldn't ignore it. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was arrested for reckless endangerment, illegal possession of a dangerous animal, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and attempted murder. He was finally the one in handcuffs. And just like that, the entire narrative changed. The charges against me were dropped. I was officially cleared of all wrongdoing. When I heard those words, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Real relief. The kind that makes your knees weak and your chest feel lighter. But the damage had already been done. I had been dragged through hell for something I didn't do. My reputation had been damaged. My peace of mind had been shattered. My life had nearly ended. Not because of a lion, but because of a lie. Marcus, on the other hand, was facing a mountain of charges and serious prison time. His social media empire collapsed overnight. Sponsors disappeared. Friends vanished. The attention he had so desperately craved now came in the form of police reports and court dates. The irony was brutal. He wanted to go viral. And he did. Just not the way he planned. Even after everything was over, I struggled to return to normal. Loud noises made me jump. Cars braking suddenly made my heart race. I didn't trust people the way I used to, especially friends. The betrayal hurt almost as much as the fear. This wasn't some random stranger. This was someone I trusted. Someone I laughed with. Someone I believed in. And he tried to ruin my life to save his own image. I kept thinking about how easily the story could have ended differently. If I hadn't hired Tommy, if Rick hadn't talked, if that doorbell camera hadn't existed, or if my car had crashed that night. One small change. And I wouldn't be here. That realization still haunts me. But it also taught me something important. The truth matters. Even when it feels buried. Even when people lie. Even when the odds are stacked against you. 'Cause eventually lies collapse. And the truth always finds a way out. You think this story ends with justice, but the final twist taught me the most painful lesson of all. After Marcus was arrested, people started reaching out. Old friends, acquaintances, even strangers who had followed his online persona. Some apologized for believing the rumors. Others admitted they had suspected something was off but didn't want to get involved. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I needed their approval, but because silence had nearly cost me my life. When I look back now, I see all the warning signs I ignored. Marcus's obsession with attention. His need to be admired. His inability to take responsibility. His willingness to cross boundaries for validation. At the time I thought he was just dramatic. Now I realize he was dangerous. I also learned something else. Something harder to accept. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones you trust the deepest. And sometimes, doing nothing is just as harmful as doing something wrong. This experience changed the way I see the world and people. I'm more cautious now. More observant. Less willing to ignore red flags just to keep the peace. But I'm also more grateful. Grateful for the lawyer who believed me. Grateful for the stranger who had a doorbell camera. Grateful for the dealer who told the truth. Grateful to still be alive. Marcus wanted to be unforgettable. And in a way he succeeded. But not as a party legend. As a cautionary tale. If this story taught me one thing, it's this. The people closest to you aren't always the ones you should trust. And sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who smiles at you first.